The White House just moments ago announcing an executive order setting reciprocal tariff rates from 10 to 41% on dozens of countries. And President Trump saying Canada, of course, one of America's closest allies, now faces a 35% tariff. And that we're just hours away from those tariffs going into effect. But what does that actually mean when the tariff numbers sort of change at the whim of one person on any given day at any given time? Richard Quest is here, host of Quest Means Business. Richard, I was reading your social media post.
Yep.
Where with, your typical call it like it is, you said that the trade agreements Trump has announced are, quote, largely garbage. And you weren't saying that just to throw it away, shall we say?
No.
There's a reason that you were saying that.
Right, because the president only has one thing in his goal, and that is a headline tariff number. 15%, 20%, 10%, doesn't matter. This goes back decades, as you know, Erin, from Donald Trump. He loves tariffs, so he's got his headline number. As for the rest of these deals, Japan invests $550 billion, EU $600 billion, $750 on exports, UK, oh, here's a good one, the UK will adopt a structured, negotiated approach, whatever that is. South Korea is going to give the president $350 billion to own and controlled, selected by myself. But there's no mechanism for any of this. There's no enforcement. There's no penalty. Nobody knows what this means.
It's I'm going to build a factory for $5 billion and fill in the blank state that has struggled. Right, and 10 years later, the $100 million was put in,
and that's why
it's that, except for exponentially bigger.
Correct, and it's again and again and again. But the president has got what he wanted, which was a headline tariff number. These deals will never come to fruition. If you think I'm wrong, they'll be fiddled, they'll be changed, they'll be fudged. Trade deals run to thousands of pages and take months, if not years, to negotiate. You don't do it like this.
No, and even when you say, oh, it's this number, it changes all the time, to your point about enforcement.
There's none.
So there's no one even knows what to enforce or where to enforce, right? So
each one of these countries is going home going, we got away with 15%. Never mind that other garbage. We got away with 15%. I know this because I've spoken to the ministers involved. They are all basically saying, how can we get away from this with the least price payable?
And they feel that they're succeeding.
Well, yeah, but they're fooling themselves, Erin, because tonight's a good example. In the last 3 days, we've had Brazil with Bolsonaro. Mm-hmm. We've had India with secondary sanctions, and tonight we've got Canada, or yesterday we've got Canada with Palestinian recognition. So tariffs are going to be used again and again and again in the future as a tool of foreign policy, and any deal that anybody's agreed, meaningless.
Well, all right, well, thank you.
I don't say this lightly, by the way.
No, I know you don't, and that's why I said when you say garbage, you're not saying it to be silly, right? You're saying it very seriously, which is why I wanted to talk about it, and thank you very much, Richard.
The White House says countries will see new tariff rates higher than 15% if they have not entered into a new trade agreement with the United States. And one official told CNN that rate will also serve as the new floor for countries that have a trade deficit with the U.S. That includes Canada, America's second largest trading partner, whose tariff rate is going to jump from 25% to 35%, a rate the Ontario Premier tonight called, quote, concerning. And I should note, these new tariff rates are not going to go into effect at midnight tonight, which was the expected deadline. Instead, the tariffs will be implemented on August 7th next week to give Customs and Border Protection enough time to make the necessary changes to collect on these tariffs. This comes after the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told me this evening that August 1st deadline is firm. Take a few questions on the tariffs.
I can't, sorry about that. I got to get to a meeting.
Any extensions or deadlines that we should be expecting? No extensions?
Is the president?
Are you expecting any last-minute agreements, Secretary Lutnick? My source tonight is the Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, who is also a member of the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee, who answered that last question for us there. And you said the answer you believe is
no.
No,
look,
why not?
President Trump promised all sorts of things that he's failing to follow through on. One of them was 90 trade agreements in 90 days. As we're seeing once again, he's threatened huge tariffs. He's threatened and berated a whole lot of our close allies and partners. And in relatively few cases has he actually implemented high tariffs. we're getting closer to when he may very well in another week implement tariffs against dozens and dozens of countries. I'll remind you, a tariff is a tax that average American consumers pay. In an interview, the Secretary of the Treasury earlier was bragging about how much money they think they'll bring in. They may well bring in a huge amount of money, but that will be paid by American consumers. It'll raise prices, it'll raise the cost of living, it'll raise inflation.
Do you think once these go into effect that we're going to see that change when it comes to inflation? Because it stayed relatively tame through the other rounds and the other considerations, but it seemed to be maybe more of a wait and see period. But the White House was saying, you guys warned against all of this and this didn't happen, to economists who had predicted the worst.
Largely because they didn't implement them. So remember that it's become almost a running joke. Taco Tuesday, Trump always chickens out on tariffs. He has threatened to impose huge tariffs on a number of our closest trading partners and then delayed them again, and delayed them again. So to the extent we may be about to see, for example, a 35% tariff on goods from Canada, that would have a significant impact. So we haven't seen huge increases in inflation and costs, or a big drop in the stock market, or a big drop in economic growth, because they haven't implemented tariffs of the level that Trump's been threatening. If he actually goes through with it now, finally, I think it could have some very negative consequences for businesses of all types and for families all over the United States.
Yeah, I mean, this executive order basically means he's significantly putting higher tariffs on virtually every trading partner the United States has. It's got a 15% rate that's the new tariff floor, which the United States has a trade deficit for those countries. That's about 40 countries that'll at least pay that. And then the tariff is lower for many of the nations in the April 2nd reciprocal tariffs, but it's still higher for some of them, some of the biggest ones. I mean, you look at this, it's got Syria 41%, Switzerland's at 39%, but you look at this list, Cambodia's on there, Vietnam's on there, well above 15%.
Some of our largest trading partners, Canada, the European Union, Brazil, are going to see significant increases, double-digit increases. And that contributes to the cost of living. So, for example, if affordability in housing is one of the biggest problems in the United States, you can't build new housing at scale in the United States without wallboard from Mexico, without plywood, lumber from Canada. Lots of the core inputs for building housing come from other countries, from our closest trading partners. For most Americans, most of the vegetables and most of the fruit that you eat come from other countries. So whether it's shoes and clothing, whether it's electronics and cars, whether it's construction and housing, we're going to see increasing costs if Trump actually imposes tariffs as high as he's threatening.
China and the U.S., they have yet to strike a trade deal, but they do have a trade truce in place. That is until August the 12th. Let's go now live to CNN's Mark Stewart joining us from Beijing. This is obviously a very complicated one, Mark. This is still quite fresh, still going through all the details from the White House. From what you've been able to see, the impacts, they appear to be pretty far-reaching, though.
No question, Polo. I mean, let's just look at this from the broader context of the global economy. These tariffs are historic, they are high, and certainly do have the potential of changing the way the world does business. We have tariffs targeting known allies such as Canada, and of course adversaries like China, where I am based. So there is a mix of implications here. Let's take a look at the markets, because Asia is the first place where trading really began since these announcements were announced. Right now in Asia, we are seeing declines across the board. We see the Nikkei, which is the benchmark in Japan, down. The Seoul Kospi, which is the main exchange in South Korea, down by more than 3%. That comes on the heels of a trade agreement that was reached yesterday, of 15% in South Korea. But South Korea also agreeing to make billions of dollars of investment in the United States, particularly when it comes to shipmaking, as the U.S. tries to encourage more manufacturing on American shores. As far as the tariff impact here in Asia, not a surprise that we're seeing declines, because if you look at where some of these tariffs are targeted, we have Taiwan at 20%, Malaysia 19%, Vietnam at 20%. These are all important trading partners. Something else to point out, these tariffs are also going to target this policy known as transshipment. Basically, what happens is that a product that is made in one country at a high tariff rate is then shipped to another country with a tariff that is much lower, and then shipped to the United States. Well, the United States is not going to tolerate that anymore, these lower rates, by diverting to another intermediary country. And so those tariffs have now been raised to 40%. That's in addition to what's already on the books by the Customs and Border Patrol. So there is going to be some change in the way business is conducted.
প্রকৃতির সর্বরূপ সন্মিলিত কৰি বিধাতাৰ অপূৰ্ব সৃষ্টিয়ে অমৰাৱতীপুৰ মোৰে সাম্ৰাজ্য। কিন্তু দেৱগণ, ব্ৰহ্মাৰ মুখৰ পৰা জানিব পাৰিছোঁ কাশ্যপৰ ঔৰসত বৈ মাতৃ দিতিয়ে জন্ম দিলে দুটি দৈত্য মহাভয়ংকৰ, নাম দিলে হিৰণ্যাক্ষ আৰু হিৰণ্য কশিপুৰ। নাজানো দেৱগণ, পুনৰ কি ঘটে ঘটন দেৱ সমাজত।
নাই কোনো চিন্তাৰ কাৰণ, সময়ত দেখা যাব কিমান শক্তিশালী সেই দিতিৰ নাম। দেৱৰাজ, দেৱতাৰ গৌৰৱত দেৱপুৰী মৰিছে জান। দৈত্যমতা দিতি আজি উন্মাদিনী হৈ দেৱৰ অহিত চিন্তি শুক্ৰাচাৰ্য বাসমনৰ 26 বছৰ নিস্বাৰ্থৰ পূৰণৰ বাবে দৈত্যগুৰু আচাৰ্য শুক্ৰই নাম নাভাবে কুমণ্ডলীৰ দানৱ দিছে উদ্গনি।
ইয়তি সত্য কথা দেৱৰাজ। ঈৰ্ষানলে দগ্ধ হৈ দৈত্য মাতা দিতি আজি অতিকৈ নিষ্ঠুৰা। দেৱ মাতা অদিতিৰ ৰহিত চিন্তা একমাত্ৰ কাম্য জীৱনৰ।
যেই কি নহওক লাগে তাৰ বাবে সচকিত নহয় দেৱতা। সময়ত দেখা যাব কেনেকে ভয়ংকৰ দ্বিতীয় নন্দন হয় হওক শত শত দৈত্য জনম তাৰ বাবে নকৰিবা পলপোৱা সংখ্যা সৃষ্টি স্থিতি আৰু পলয়ৰ গৰাকী যিজন হয় যদি দেৱৰ সহায় লক্ষ লক্ষ দৈত্য মিলিলেও কৰিব নোৱাৰে একো অনিষ্ট সাধন
পৰাজ দিয়ে যদি অনুমতি এটি কথা ক'ব খুজো মই
কোৱা বিশ্বকৰ্মা আনন্দেৰে মই দিছোঁ অনুমতি
ভৱিষ্যত চিন্তা কৰি দেৱ সমাজৰ চিন্তা কৰি সমগ্ৰ